Cool. Yeah. So yeah, nice to meet you again, Shawn. Yeah, I'm Dan. Uh, I was a longtime pen tester here at Bishop Fox. I run the our R&D department these days, or at least do a lead researcher, I guess is my technical term, my uh, title. So yeah, I guess maybe a good place to start is maybe just introduce yourself and how did you see the challenge, and maybe to walk us through a little bit about how you went about it.
Sure. Well, I'll state my name to begin with. My name is Shawn. I'm currently a practice director within our threat management team here at Optiv. I focus on application security, and all of my team underneath me also does. So I've been in the industry for 22-ish years now.
So about
Previous
as
to that,
long
I
as the
was
industry has existed.
exactly right. Yeah. So like right after Y2K, it kind of shifted from concerns about things breaking because of the bit roll to hey, let's pay attention to something else. And
Yeah.
got into that. Formerly was a developer, and I had a great run with that. And I think it complemented my move into the industry. Um, but I've been here a long time. Optiv is out here doing a lot of the same good work that your company is as well. And we like to stay in touch with like what everyone is doing and what cool things are emerging. And this caught my eye. Just like I forget exactly where I picked it up, to be honest. But your article definitely was ingested by my team, and I think I took that and kind of turned it into an internal exercise so we could learn by creating our own examples, much like you did. And we kicked the tires on your tool, and then honestly we kind of went about our daily routines until the CTF emerged. And I'm one of the values, I guess, at our company is being curious. I think it's probably part of our native call to this type of work. So I checked it out, and I thought, this looks interesting. I just kind of wonder how to approach it. Um, and I'd be happy to talk about any of the details of my approach.
Yeah.
And actually, I'd love to hear your thoughts about, because I know I gave you a preview of my write up. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Unredacter is not the most clean tool I've ever written. It works on my machine, and I'm not sure that it works on anyone else's.
It did run. It
Yeah.
actually did kind
Yeah.
of kind of function. So
Yeah, it's very sensitive towards being able to faithfully reproduce the original text, and turns out that depends on so many things. That like cross-platform, the renderers are totally different, and that was actually a bigger lift than I thought it was going to be. So I knew that like changing the domain from pixelization to blurring was like enough to like switch things up a bit. And I hope that the challenge seemed like tantalizingly close enough to you, where like it feels like you can almost read the blurred text, but like not quite. And that's used so often, right? Like people blur text as a way of redacting things so often that it seemed like it would actually be useful to like, put a stake in that again and be like, don't do this.
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's part of the industry, right? I mean, we're out here, often on a journey with our clients in their endeavor to secure and be more resilient, and confidentiality, right, of what is posted, shared, transmitted, etc. Right, is part of that equation. So I think it does really speak. Maybe there are connections, I guess I want to say, with not only our day to day as consultants, but the way that the clients use the technologies and even their processes to secure their own sensitive information, right? So I felt that it was fun, yet it was relevant, and it
Yeah.
I could see, by extension, looking at even some of the automated technologies that we use every day, that we probably don't even pay attention to the number of blurred pieces of images in our lives. Um,
Yeah.
I think maybe that's perhaps something that someone could take from what we've done in your or through your challenge, and maybe explore a little deeper.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to take credit for this, but I'm so this is going to sound like a divergence, but so I love documentaries. I'm just like a documentary guy, and there's a PBS NewsHour has like a wonderful set of a Frontline rather has a bunch of documentaries, and so I was watching one on I think it was the like Panama Papers or something, and as part of that they had a bunch of redacted documents kind of like floating in front of the screen, and they all had like the pixelization on it, and then like it was literally like the week after I put out my blog post, there was another documentary on something completely unrelated that came out, and they had another piece of redacted information. But this time they had black bars over everything, and I went. Now I'm not saying that that was because of me, but that did put that out
There's
after.
a possibility,
There's a
right?
possibility, yeah. So anyway, yeah, I'm really interested in how you went about it. Like, what kind of tooling did you put together, or like what kind of techniques did you think of to come at it?
Yeah, so I really wanted to script this, to be able to, eventually solve it and then make it repeatable uh, for other use cases. I think is kind of where my head went first. And being somewhat familiar with, the way your tool worked, I knew, after I took like a short breath, I knew that was going to be a lot of work. Because and also it raised a lot of questions like is are the assumptions around the way that you approached the depixelization uh, uh, question, were those still valid when it comes to blurs? And I honestly wasn't all that familiar with the different types of blurring techniques that were used in various tools at that initial step. So I think I always had it in the back of my mind that like once I understood the problem a little more, I I kind of kept it open to maybe circling back to revisiting either your tool or Dpix in some way to kind of retrofit or maybe just overhaul it to be applicable in the blurred redaction case. Uh, so that's kind of where I began. I try to jot down as many ideas as I could about because I'm sure you've done the same thing. You know uh, we like challenges, we like puzzles, and CTFs are big in our industry, and I've
Totally.
done a lot of those in the past. And many of those include some sort of imaging type challenge. So I've used tools like GIMP and various other imaging platforms to kind of be able to solve for those. And so yeah, so I fired up GIMP and kind of started playing around. And I used a combination of that tool plus I think at some point I realized that the kind of emergent approaches to artificial intelligence, image recognition, and actually unblurring. A lot of that uh, fairly new technology is even baked into a lot of our digital cameras now to provide a more a better quality image. Reducing shakiness, reducing blurriness, things like that. Even post production or
Hmm. Yeah.
post processing, you can apply a lot of those filters even from your phone. So I wondered, like, was there an AI based tool or machine learning tool that might help me out? And I actually found one online. I honestly forget the name of it, but it's in my blog. And I checked that. I just kind of accepted the defaults, uploaded the image, and it actually came back with something, which proved to me
Yeah.
that hey, now okay, this is looking like it's truly possible to unblur the image in some way using an algorithm. So then
Yeah, yeah,
I
that part was
yeah.
fascinating. It seemed like it
Yeah.
caught you like not all the way there, like, but it got you to a point where like you could really start to see the shapes a little bit better.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, at that point, I knew I had to do a little more research. as any good curious consultant would do, or even anyone really related working in tech, I suppose. So I did, I researched the Gaussian blurs. There was a one that seemed to apply pretty well to Gaussian, that was called
Hmm.
the sorry, kind of cheating here, looking at my blog,
No,
the
no, go ahead.
Richardson-Lucy deconvolution
Yeah.
convolution function, and uh, that looked promising. And I found, like, where GIMP didn't have that natively. I didn't come across documentation that said it had it built in, but there was a plugin. But I actually found
Mm.
a better tool online from a research lab in France, believe it or not, that had an online imaging website. And I actually tried Richardson Lucy. I tried a bunch of other different sharpening filters that enabled you to kind of tweak the parameters in real time and see, like, a preview of the results in the header of the page. And this is all just, like, baked into their website. And
Oh, that's
that
cool.
enabled me to, like, yeah, move a lot quicker through ideas, parameter values, thresholds, all the knobs and levers that you can turn, just like trying what. And that actually fed into sort of this feedback loop of sharpening pieces of the blurred image that you created, in a way that I could at least validate what the characters were likely behind the blur. And then, yeah, so I mean, I didn't include all of those, like, trials and errors in my article, but that kind of behind the scenes, that's what I did. And then I also ended up, uh, actually, way earlier on in the process, recognized that, knowing the font size, shape, family, weight, all of that would
Yeah.
probably be important, like it was in the tool you created. And so what I did is I took a best guess at a piece, the solution, uh, typed it in to my text editor, I guess, a screenshot, a screen grab of it, ran it through the Gaussian filter, and just kind of did an A/B comparison until I felt
Hmm.
fairly confident what the source text was. So it was actually so manual as far
Yeah.
as the process.
Yeah, that part, it's hard to bootstrap, right? I just pasted into the chat, and hopefully you can see that. That was the original image. It was actually just the default font in GIMP. You're probably really close to it in Linux. So I think
Oh, okay.
that's
Yeah.
in my notes there in the image I wrote down sans serif, but I didn't even think about it at the time. That's not a font. That's a font class. I think it's technically a Deja Vu Sans. Um,
Oh,
is
okay.
the name of the font, if you were to, like, pull it up online. Yeah, I think if you, I think if you were if you were, you must have been on, like, Windows or Mac. I think otherwise, whatever the default
Both,
font is would
actually.
have just worked. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, I tried so many fonts, and I figured it was uh, something in a Linux variant that you were using. But I also felt that it was close enough because you could.
yeah,
Yeah, honestly, my approach, it didn't matter if you nailed it. It was just, okay, can you validate? And that's interesting. I'm looking at the last piece of that, and I suspected you had a little trick at the end, and I was going to ask you, like, so when you created this image, you actually just ran it through a single pass blur,
that's
nothing
correct.
kind of
Yeah,
tricky.
yep. Nothing else there. Just single pass
Okay.
Gaussian blur with the 7.5. So it's a 15 by 15, like, block. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So my last little endeavor to figure out what that last word was assumed it was an English word.
Yeah, so that was the part that, I was super curious about, was, like, the, so the whole thing, was a reference to, sneakers. There's a movie reference, baked in there. I think you were, like, so close to, being able to Google for it. I think that,
Oh, I was
that was one of the
googling like mad.
I know we were actually concerned about that, about like, having been able to get, like, only part of it and then being able to Google for the rest. I think that if you get, like, there's a reference that is pasted in the chat as well. There's the from the movie Sneakers, where like that like
Mm,
pops up on screen at some point, where it's like one of the plot points in the movie. Um,
okay,
yeah, so it's a bit of a
I'll have to
deep
go
cut in
back.
terms of movie references, but I think it's
Yeah,
common enough where like if you get the beginning part of it, then that you can kind of get the rest.
yeah, and
So
yeah, if I had mentioned that to my wife, she would have probably instantly just told me that. But
yeah, it
yeah,
always seems like that in retrospect, though. Yeah, so
yeah.
so you have like a mostly de-blurred section at that point. So you're kind of like manually running through the characters and saying like, well, how well does this match up like A B? Or
Mhm.
did you do like just like a visual like testing, or did you actually run like a diff and then you're looking at the
Yeah, no, I thought about doing like the whole overlay and then maybe like some channel comparison, but no, it was purely visual. I
okay,
didn't honestly
yeah,
spend but a couple of hours on this.
yeah, that's great.
Uh, yeah, so it's one of those things where, hey, I'll get it close and I'll just kind of see if how close I was, kind of thing. And now I'm looking at the blurred text. I totally see the slash,
Oh,
in
yeah,
my last image. Um, at some point though, I was like, okay, clearly something's different about that set of characters. And believe it or not, I found a combination, and it was like that on rail or whatever I posted, uh,
yeah,
that seemed to associate with the transnet, right? It was some that combination that, due to the Gaussian diffusion of the characters, made it look really close to like on rail, uh,
yeah, yeah.
which was really interesting to me.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's one of the things about like the blurring that I found really fascinating too, as like a subject, is that it is a lossy process. So like you do lose some information. Sometimes you might get that kind of, you might sort of get trolled by like one character kind of blurring and looking very much like a different character. But nonetheless, it's tantalizingly close, right? Like it seems like you can kind of sort of read it even like without the any pre-processing. And then once you actually start like kind of applying some like filters to de-blur it a little bit, it gets closer, and then context clues can kind of get you a little bit closer yet.
Mm. But it also goes to show that context clues could be misleading.
That's true. That's also true. Yeah, especially when you're imagining this to like when you don't know the context. Like if something is you know if you're thinking someone's blurring a password, say, right, then the the letters may be random. Like you might not have any meaningful context to guess the middle of it. You play the classic Wheel of Fortune game with the letters, right? Might not work for like a password that's been redacted. So yeah, it was super fascinating to see how I know when you got your submission in, it was like you were off by like one letter, and that just like really intrigued me. I was like, oh wow, like that means he's doing something right objectively. Like he's
Right.
got it like almost like 99% correct. Like, but like something was that was I was super fascinated to hear how you went about it. So that was really fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably not the approach that you expected people to take. I'm kind of curious if
Yeah.
I'm like so far in left field compared to the other submissions, and
No, yeah,
what you knew
well, yeah,
about it.
one of the other folks had done something that was similar to what Unredactor does. So it like faithfully reproduced the original the hint message. So it figured out the font and stuff, and then assumed that it was the same font, of course, which it was. Um, and then wrote a little bit of Python. It was like 20 lines that just like iterates through, provides a Gaussian blur. Had to guess the blur parameters, was basically just size of the blur kernel. Um, and then like went through guessing character by character until he got it, which is like pretty cool. It
Yeah.
in order to, like you said, generalize that, like maybe I'll get your thoughts on that. Like how much harder do you think it would be to then take your approach and make that more generalizable? Like not for any other blurring technique, but like if somebody gave you a new challenge, basically, like how hard would it be to do that one?
Well, I mean, specifically like taking some of this innovation to the next step is kind
Yeah,
of where my head went with your
yeah,
question.
Yeah.
The brute force approach, essentially, of what the script is doing, may not work as well when you're dealing with images that have depth, or some sort of rotation, or a combination of both,
Yeah.
and even lighting, right? So there's all kinds of factors that may impact the quality and the size of the image and all of that, as far as like relative font size, if it's a depth thing, or even yeah. So I'm kind of curious if uh, like taking a batch of images from an online source, right? Uh, Take social media, or maybe some machine learning data set, right? And running them through a Gaussian blur in an automated way, and then seeing if you could redact all of those samples through perhaps a different, like I said, a different. Maybe you create a model to be able to be
Yeah.
able to solve for that.
That was something that occurred to me too, is like how well suited is machine learning to this kind of vulnerability, right? And so there are some ML tools out there that do deblurring, but they are only oriented towards things like faces, towards like locations. Like you said earlier, like your cameras will do deblurring on images, right? And there's kind of a set of like baked in assumptions there that make it not work in this problem space, where like
Right.
they're trying to add information into the image to like fill in the little details, right? But you can't just make up details in this case. Like you like if you get the blur, I'm very sure that you could make a machine learning program that will make some text, like invent text whole cloth, right? That will kind of make it look like it was the original blurred. But that's not good enough. We need to get the actual original text. You can't make up details, basically.
Well, but
Um,
that would assume a single pass validator, essentially, or a classifier.
right.
But if you had a multi-pass that actually just automated the brute forcing aspects to do image recognition based on a training data set, and then perhaps a live input data set, and compared it in some sort of sequential slash parallel, I guess a combination of that architecture, I
Yeah.
would think there is a solution out there that could be solved
Yeah,
or
maybe
designed
there's
and
like,
solved.
yeah, I was thinking maybe if you trained it specifically on deblurring text, right?
Hmm.
As opposed to I think the existing prior art is focused on like faces and places and things like that.
Right.
Where the like I think you were hinting at, if you were to like take text and then blur it and then use that as the input to the model, then you're more likely to get like the action, and then have the loss function, like how well it can actually get the original text. Then like that sounds like it might work. I don't know.
Yeah, and I wish I had more time to dive into, like, like learning really TensorFlow and PyTorch and all of those tech stacks so well that I could just, like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's 20
Totally.
lines of Python, and you're done, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there's
Totally.
someone there's a listener that's watching this now that can do that.
Yeah, that was one of my initial impressions of the problem space, was like everyone's coming at it from this like really fancy thing, like this highfalutin ideas about using machine learning. Like in my brain, I'm like, why can't we just brute force the stupid thing? That's why that was like, maybe I'm missing something obvious here, but I feel like we could just guess the characters character by character. Um, though maybe in the Gaussian blur instance, that's actually a little bit harder, since they really do tend to bleed into itself more, right? So like because the characters are bleeding over into themselves so much that maybe like that makes it harder to do individual characters. Whereas pixelization, like it kind of tends to have nice hard boundaries.
That was one of my concerns in, like, kind of going down the path of the unredactor modification, because with pixelation, you tend to treat each character in blocks, and with the diffusion factor of Gaussian, I honestly wasn't sure how that was applied as it moved, as the algorithm did its thing. Was it top down? Was it sequentially? Moving across the x-axis. How that actually works.
Yeah, awesome, cool. Well, yeah, I think that's about all the questions that I had. I'm happy that you found it as entertaining as I hope you would.
Oh, it was a blast. Yeah, it was a couple of hours, after work where, uh, I thought, let's give it a try. And I think I learned a few things, in the course of it. So I appreciate you putting it together, and I hope we can see another one of these in the future.
Great, thanks.